In this lesson, we're going to open up our scene and set the scale. So let's set the project. I'm going to go to Fast Rigging and Animation, and then I'll open up the robot folder. It's in the scenes, and robot start. Okay, so here's our scene, and you can see, let me just go to the perspective here. This is our model, and what we need to do is we need to scale this to the right scale. And the reason we do that first of all is because rigs are pretty tricky to scale. You can scale this system, but it can cause some problems. So I would definitely recommend that you decide on the scale that you're going to use for your scene and your character, and then make your character from the start based on that scale. So what we're going to do is make this 200 centimeters tall. So I'm going to assume it's kind of a roughly a tall man size rather than a giant. So I'm just going to measure that. So we'll just create a cube. So here's our cube, and it's right down the bottom there. And we'll just make this height 200. And I'll just move it up in the Y direction 100. So translate Y 100. So we should have a cube here, which is the right height. So now if we go to the front view, it should be on the floor there. If you look at your axes, let me just change the background color. There we go. So you can see that's our cube there. Just make it a bit wider so you can see. There we go. Right, so that's just for our reference. And so we're just going to scale this down. So I'm going to take this group and I'm going to scale this down, and let's zoom in. Okay, so let's just scale this down a little bit more. Okay, this is just to help you if you're doing your own characters. So, you know, if you're doing more of a normal character, it's going to be a similar situation, just so that it's a little bit easier to follow. Okay. So now that we've got that, we've got this in the middle of the scene, and it's a symmetrical pose, as you can see. So that's very handy, and we need to have that in order to get it rigging in using the human IK system. So first thing we need to do, let's get rid of this, is just to make sure that everything has got frozen transforms. So you can see that I just scaled that. So that means the scale is set to 0.103. So basically we haven't frozen the transforms. So for example, if you are to move this arm like this, if you wanted to get that back to that position, if you couldn't undo, it would be pretty tricky to do because you'd have to actually move it into the exact position. So the thing that we normally do is, if you've got separate pieces like this, you just select everything and then you freeze the transforms, and that's going to set everything to 0 on here. So if you want to get back to this position, you just type in 0 and boom, it's going to go back to the position. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's just do this right now. So just make sure you marquee the geometry, and we're just going to go to modify, freeze transformations. I'll just reset this just so that we're all on the same page, and then freeze transforms. Okay, so now you can see it's all set to 0. So if I were to just move this around or rotate it into a weird position, let's just move this around, you know, whatever. Okay, let's just say we moved it by accident. All we have to do, select it all and select the first 6 columns here, and we just go to 0 and we get back to our pose. Pretty cool. So it's just easy to use and get back to the pose there. And let's just make sure that we do that for the group as well. And so then everything is set. So we'll just freeze the transforms of that as well. And the good thing to do is also to delete history, just in case you've got any kind of history here for if you've done any modeling or anything like that, because everything else is going to be applied on top of this. So Maya has to calculate things like the deformation for the skin or any parenting, anything that you might do to move this character around is going to calculate that. So it's going to calculate the modeling first and then do the deformation. So it's going to slow it down. So make sure you delete your history before you start all this. So you can see I've got the freeze transform history here. So let's just grab everything. And in fact, you don't have to. You can just go to edit, delete all by type, and then just go to history. Okay, so that's just going to delete history on everything in the scene. So now you can see none of those objects have got any history on there. Okay, so we're going to save that as 01. Okay, so I'm going to call that robot 01. So during this project, make sure you try to save along with me at the same time, because it's easier to go back. You normally have to go back if you're doing rigging for the first time. Sometimes you need to start again, you need to go back. So you go back 1 step forward, 2 steps back. So sometimes you might need to go back. So make sure you save when I save. So I'm just going to call that robot 01. So that's our geometry ready. So let's repeat what we've done. We've scaled our object to the right scale. We've frozen the transform so they get back to 0, 0, 0 position, so we can get them back to this default pose nice and easily. And then we've deleted the history. So now our geometry is ready to roll.